Wolong Fallen Dynasty is the next game from Team Ninja and Koei Tecmo. Team Ninja, known for their recent titles such as games of the Neo series, various Dead or Alive titles, and most recently the Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin title. Wolong itself is an action RPG set during the Han Dynasty in China, and is their own take on the epic Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Much like their Neo and Stranger of Paradise games, this is an action RPG. Most people would probably say that it's a Souls-like, though as I've come to realize from playing it, and perhaps a few others will have as well, it's more akin to being a Sekiro-like, which is what most would consider From Software's game that has departed the most amount from their recent titles, Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Elden Ring, and is definitely the most different in combat and storytelling manner, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think this is a good game to use as a blueprint, and while not as punishing as Sekiro was, there can definitely be some difficulty found in Wolong, both in terms of the game as well as its performance on PC, all of which I will cover here shortly. So let's dig in, shall we? Firstly, let's start off with how the game can be customized on your PC and how it runs, one of which is currently bogging down the Steam and various other PC reviews, and honestly, rightfully so. Various game and UI settings are present, allowing the player to clean up the player model or diminish UI clutter. You can also remove blood from the character and weapons as well, remove combat damage numbers coming from up on the screen, health bars, weapon models from showing up in the character that aren't actively being used. Subtitles being apparent. Unlike Atomic Heart, you can have the spoken audio and the subtitles not be in the same language. So as with what I did, I had the voice over and the voice acting appearing in Japanese with English subtitles. Some quality of life options are available, such as skipping already viewed cutscenes if you're entering a boss battle again for the second or third or fourth time, or going into a new area on a subsequent playthrough, such as in New Game Plus. There's also a bevy of options here for the player to customize their gameplay experience, even going as far to turn off the confirmation for dismantling or upgrading weapons, adding a little extra difficulty for the possibility of fat-fingering those buttons and getting rid of that 5-star weapon that you've upgraded immensely on accident. Control-wise, you are given the option for the game to show support for the PS5 DualSense, Xbox controller, mouse and keyboard, or even just keyboard, which I found was odd, honestly. Now, at the time when I played through it, mouse support wasn't really there and was just downright disappointing and awful. Mouse control had a dead zone, of that like a controller joystick. It was nigh impossible to aim a ranged weapon with it, and it just wasn't a good experience or something that I couldn't recommend at all, but a recent patch has fixed that amongst a few other issues with the game itself. Graphics-wise, we have the normal options here, with NVIDIA DLSS on the way in a future patch, which will make the game look better in some places, run better, as that service is known to do. I was able to run the game 70% of the time at a solid 100 plus frames on the game's highest graphical settings. The real issues came from some severe stuttering and slowdown. Remember how a while ago Wild Hearts was having a game slowdown for some players? Well, it seems that this is common from a Koei Tecmo produced and Team Ninja developed titles on the PC ports of games, as this was happening in this game to me as well, and oh boy was it frustrating. Nothing ruins a great run of combat just going through and mowing through the enemies available on the map when your game slows down and stops working. Nothing like jumping into combat and you can't dodge out of the way of a heavy attack and you just get murdered. Now, a patch was recently released that solved a lot of crashing issues that most people were reporting and improved the mouse controls, making it actually a viable option if you wanted to use a mouse and keyboard for the game, but nothing so far for the stuttering issue and the frame rate loss and the gameplay slowdown that other players such as myself are having. So bear in mind, this is unfortunate, because this can be very game-breaking at the time and remove all enjoyment from the game. Otherwise, the game itself is fantastic to look at and fantastic to play. Now, moving on to how the game looks and sounds, the game itself is very pretty. It's not the best looking game out there, but it definitely gets the jobs done. The models, both human and demon, are super detailed and have a sort of wow factor the first time you encounter them, especially the boss enemies that you will run across quite a few of, and even some of the larger, more elite style of enemies. The The varied environments are all masterfully crafted with plenty of places to explore and even detailed vistas you can just take a moment to stop and take a look at. All extremely detailed for places that you can't actually visit, and is just kind of a quality that is there and that Team Ninja has quite masterfully done across all of the games that they've developed. The weapon models and armor models were also extremely well done. They are all unique in their own ways, a majority being what you'd expect realistically: plated armor, chain armor, cloth robes, the like, while some being decidedly fantasy and over the top. Particularly some weapons which are available to wield. Spirit magic effects are also extremely well done and fantastic to look at, from coating your weapon in stone chucks to apply a stone slowing down effect, to applying an armor effect, to casting poisonous globs or calling down lightning storms or summoning up raging infernos. They really nailed the look of what it feels like to cast magic in this game, and it's all extremely well done. With that, moving over to the sound design, the spirit magic sounds fantastic as well. Each spell is unique and satisfying to cast and subsequently hear. Doesn't really get tiring hearing the lightning being called down over and over again if that's something you do. Overall, the sound design is good. From the combat to the enemies to the environments, the music is well serving as well, coming to a rise in each boss fight for each zone, making the encounter with these demons seem truly magnificent. On the topic of voice work, I played with a Japanese voiceover and used English subtitles. This is probably the way to go, with Team Ninja being behind the development of this game. So I have no idea how the English voice work for the game is, but the Japanese voice work is definitely mostly great, aside from a few typical, like, weird grunts or exclamations from female characters in this game as they're running and trying to catch up, but that's to be expected anymore. Now, the cinematics are mostly contained as some still art drawn scenes with a voiceover done by the main NPC accompanying you through the main quest in each area, and these are done very well. The art style, the voice work, the sound effects that put emphasis on each scene, all entertaining to come across the first time, serving their purpose and recapping each area and the NPC's life and the exploits up to that point. Now, there are some in-game cutscenes that are few and far between, though, but they are mostly just a transition from one area to another, or from the exploration part of the level to the boss fight arena. So those are there, but they're definitely mostly just there to serve a purpose, and that's to transition you from one location to another within the main quest area. The combat is the main course here in Wo Long. Team Ninja has released a couple of their own unique entries into the growing genre of Souls-like, notably their entries in the Neo series, Neo 1 and Neo 2, as well as Stranger Paradise, Final Fantasy Origins, though that one's probably more aligned to just kind of a typical action RPG. Both of these series and game have their own distinctive twists on the game, such as being more akin to looter shooters with a bevy of weapons and armor drops that you can customize your gameplay experience, more so than, say, in Dark Souls or Elden Ring, most notably, where you just have a few base armor sets and quite a bit of weapons, actually. But these item drops all have extra stat bonuses or set bonuses that you can, so it's really more like a looter shooter and stuff you'd see coming from, say, like Diablo or Borderlands. Also, the extreme difference here between Neo and the Neo series and Stranger Paradise and what makes Wo Long itself is that Team Ninja seemingly decided to make a Sekiro-like rather than a Souls-like, where the combat is based around pressing your offense and knowing when to wait and parry and counter an enemy's attack, breaking their spirit, the stamina from Sekiro, and allowing a very powerful fatal attack follow-up. This makes every encounter with multiple enemies or bosses seem more like a violent flowing dance and are just really fun to look at and participate in. From multiple quick attacks to parry in quick succession, to large sweeping critical attacks that you need to time just right to give you a brief stun on the enemy to provide a window to get in some damage, or if they're stunned for a fatal attack. It's all about breaking your enemy's spirit. Now, this works on you as well. You need to manage your spirit as well, or you can be stunned and be given your own sort of fatal attack. Dodging, blocking, casting spirit magic, and getting hit with an attack from the enemy all will give you negative spirit, so it needs to be managed. Though through leveling, there are certain attributes that you can level up, such as negative spirit being removed by a percentage for casting spirit magic. Dodging takes less spirit magic. Deflecting takes less spirit magic. Getting hit gives you less negative spirit as well. So there is some room to customize based on your playstyle. This is definitely a Sekiro-Like, as the parry windows are a lot more forgiving, and there is not the ability to rely upon stealthing through an area, but it's fun nonetheless, and a good change from all the Souls-likes we do seemingly get. Now, the areas you play through are segmented for each portion of your main quest. This is much like Nioh and Nioh 2. You have a large open area to run through with multiple paths to explore sometimes, but ultimately linear enough to keep you on track. They are designed to get you from the start to the finish line, culminating in a boss fight with a large demon, with plenty of little side areas to explore and plenty of other enemy types to encounter along the way. Now, you can return to each area for different side quests, granting some extra rewards, such as gear and crafting materials, while the areas can be laid out slightly different and don't offer the same level of exploration. They're definitely a really quick sprint rather than the marathon that each level are traditionally. One new thing included, though, is the morale system. Both yourself and enemies in Woling have a morale rank that can increase and decrease. You start each area with a morale of 0. You raise this by killing enemies or finding the various flags around the zones. This incentivizes the player to fight their way through the level rather than just running by and skipping the lower enemies, as each boss will be standard with a 20 morale, making them a much more dangerous foe, where you damage them less and they damage you more. Various enemy units will have extra morale if they've killed another player who is connected online in some sort of part of the world, and killing them will grant a morale bonus to you as well. Now, dying reduces your morale and increases it of the enemy that killed you. So there is some punishment to the system, but overall I think it's a great addition to the game and a great experiment to kind of try to get people from just skipping and running through the areas on subsequent playthroughs. It makes it very worthwhile to kill all the enemies to raise that morale bonus, as well as, apply the key that you need to level up. In addition to morale, you can also unleash a super powerful attack or buff to you and your party. After building up with your Divine Beast gauge, you can assign different beasts to your party as like kind of another equipment slot, and you can change these at the different battle flags, and they all have different active uses, such as a zone that heals you and your party, or consuming it for a temporary buff of your party and yourself while fighting. It is a unique system, and the build of this actually persists through death, so if you do die, that beast gauge will stay built up for you, so you can pop it in a boss battle if you do find yourself needing it. Each time you go through a main zone and complete the main quest in that area, you will be given the option to summon a new Divine Beast and equip it and use it at the time that you do deem necessary, and they all do have varying abilities that you can use as both a active skill, such as the healing zone, or just a damaging circle around you, or a buff to apply. Finally, we have the loot and crafting system. You are given a lot of loot drops. If you kill an enemy, more than likely you're getting something out of it to pick it up, whether it be a weapon, a piece of armor, or consumable. Overall, there are 5 rarities for weapons and armors, with the highest being only available in New Game Plus. Increased rarity grants extra passive buffs, be it to damage, spirit draining related, or spirit magic buffs. Even some set items exist with set bonuses. Now, aside from the rarities, you can also just upgrade the items with crafting materials to increase their base stats, such as damage or damage absorption. Typical Souls-like upgrading system, and gear goes up in steps of such as +1 to +2 to +3, so on, each needing increasingly more of a more in quantity and a rare material type. Now, when you do destroy a lower quality weapon, you don't get back all of the upgraded materials, but honestly, I made it through it just fine with the normal stuff I have. It seems like most of the set bonuses and everything is just really there if you want to min-max and for style points, honestly. And with that, I mean, you can transmogrify your gear to kind of give you a look of like what you want as well. I went with a ancient Chinese Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater look, so I mean, you can do some pretty interesting stuff if you want. Now, Wolong Fallen Dynasty is based upon the 14th century historical novel, Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Much like how Nioh and Nioh 2 were based upon real-life historical events, locations, and people, they added a distinct mythological flair to it. So while Nioh and Nioh 2 had a Japanese mythological vibe, dealing with yokai and other various demons and stuff like that in the Japanese mythos, Wolong really falls into the Chinese mythos. You have decidedly supernatural and mythological elements, one being you are in a way immortal. You can harness the power of various divine beasts, and you are fighting demonic corruption and large demons themselves. Overall, the presentation of the story is done in a great way, with entertaining and action-filled cutscenes introducing new characters as they come in, both allies and villains, to the still-frame cinematic cuts I mentioned earlier in the review, which really do steal the show and kind of the story building of the characters. The story and theme are all there and work extremely well together, creating an interesting and immersive world for the player to explore, characters to meet and fight alongside of, and you even have a relationship that you can build up with the various NPCs you can summon to help you out if that's something you do want to do. Overall, Wolong was a great game to play when it was playable. Amidst my immense stuttering at random times, I struggled to continue playing through these times as it ruined the clean or long runs through areas to a boss fight, but the hope that it would clear up so I can get more and more of the satisfying combat and ridiculous over-the-top boss fights kept me going. A patch has been released that solves many of the issues other PC players were having, though it unfortunately seems my exact issue was not resolved. Now, I did play it on the GamesPass, and my friend on Steam had none of the same issues, but rather had crashing instead, which I did not experience. Now, the stuttering and slowdowns were not solely on my platform, as if you check out the Steam page for Wolong, you will see numerous negative reviews about the game and its terrible, terrible poor PC port. If you have GamesPass, I definitely recommend giving it a try. Maybe you won't have any issues, but if you do, well, you've already had GamesPass, so you're not really purchasing the game outright. But for someone looking to purchase on PC, honestly, I'd wait until another performance patch comes along solving these issues and bugs, because those slowdowns are unenjoyable to say the least. Now, I will let it to be said that I did try out the game on an Xbox Series X for a portion, and I had zero performance issues, though the game did not look as good as it did on my PC. So on a console, go ahead and give it a go. You'll have a blast if you're into looking for something to play that's akin to Sekiro, though most people will probably still just call it a Souls-like, but it's really a Sekiro-like. But if you do insist playing on a PC, your results may vary. Though I will say that it is definitely a game to give a try. It was an absolute blast, put together very well, though some of the systems, such as the immense quantity of loot, doesn't necessarily seem to me to be there. It was just something else bogging down my time that I was enjoying in Wolong Fallen Dynasty.